Meghan Markle. Oh my God, what am I saying? I mean, of course, Meghan Sussex, the made-up name the dollar store duchess regally commands that we now call her. If she's interested, her actual marital surname is Mountbatten-Windsor, but that's in the real world. And as we found out, with a mounting sense of horror on her disastrously dull Netflix show, Meghan dwells in an entirely different world. Her world, in all its weirdness. Greeted with universal disdain by the critics and all-round contempt on social media, the atrocious With Love Meghan seems like a farewell letter from a wannabe star who quite simply hasn't got a clue. If Mrs. Sussex deliberately set out to bore us to tears, mission accomplished. But if she thinks this dreary dross is destined for smash hit success, I've got bad news for her. What the hell is this swirling mass of irrelevance supposed to be? Who in the name of God is it for? Is it aimed at 90-year-old grannies? TikTok is a sea of rage with young people, a mixture of bemused and angry over a bizarre programme they can't remotely relate to. Who's got time to waste hours making candles from beeswax? The Duchess helpfully informing those of us who don't own our own hives that we can get beeswax from our local beekeeper. Eh? Many of her luxury living tips seem to involve removing products from their shop bags and putting them into other bags tied up with a bow. Remember, folks, never tie a knot without a bow. Episode 1 of this 8-part dirge revolves around lovely, smiling Meg cutting up millions of vegetables for her lackey employee, Daniel, the makeup man. Olympic-class sycophant Daniel is easily pleased. "Why doesn't everyone serve them like this?" he gushes. "They're like green pearls." "No, Danny boy, they're just peas." As he joins his boss to enjoy the view from the house she has rented as a film studio, Dan declares, "This all feels so fake." Couldn't have put it better myself. It starts with bees. As some John Lennon lookalike helps Meghan confront her fears. Insects buzzing around her, Meg whispers, "I'm trying to stay in the calm of it. It's beautiful to be so connected." To what? What is she on about? For the indecipherable Mrs. Sussex, English is a second language. She speaks Californian gobbledygook. Check this out. "What was really fun was learning something with your friends and then recognizing that the mahjong becomes the background of the expansion of the friendship." Does she even know what that means? And does she even have friends? Or just minions like Daniel on the payroll and roped-in C-list renter celebs? But back to the show, as we savour the joys of someone else's kitchen while Meghan regularly, unwisely, blurts out, "This is not my real home." There's a must-have recipe for ice cubes. Remember, folks, never use tap water. And she bakes a cake, even though she doesn't like baking. Nor do I. Especially when the laborious construction of a monstrous, amateurish honey lemon sponge is presented to the stupefied audience as TV entertainment. "It's a beautiful on the inside cake," Meghan insists. Let's hope so, because it's ugly on the outside. She brews some tea with all the visual charm of a urine sample. Coming soon, by the way, to a lifestyle site near you, and chucks some pasta and tomatoes into a pot and grandiosely calls it single skillet spaghetti. Memo to Meg. The water you boil the pasta in is not a sauce. She makes the mistake of introducing professional chef Roy Choi, whose culinary skills remind us that plodding home-cook Meghan doesn't really have any. And then that excruciating moment when she rounds on likeable actress Mindy Kaling for calling her Meghan Markle. You could cut the ice-cold atmosphere with one of the Duchess's sorely overused vegetable knives as she hisses, "It's so funny. You keep saying Meghan Markle, but you know it's Sussex now." No, Meghan, it's not Sussex, and it's definitely not funny. What is funny is the unintentional comedy of a toweringly tedious production that is so breathtakingly bad, it's almost mesmerising. But what's that noise? It's the sound of off switches being pressed by the handful of long-suffering viewers who are still awake. It's the sound of failure.
I don't think anyone in the world knows that Meghan Markle has eaten Jack in the Box and loves it.
It's so funny, too, that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm Sussex now.
As you know, I'm not her biggest fan. The series, what's it called? With Love Meghan. Yes. Where essentially she gets chocolates that she's bought, shoves them in some plastic, wraps a ribbon around them and passes it off in a kitchen that isn't hers, in a house that isn't hers, to friends that aren't hers.
Well, I think the friends... Well, there's a couple of... Well, there's the makeup artist, there's a chef, and a few other people drop in. But having watched it and given up 8 hours of my life, I have to say, these friends, it's not really... These friends are just props.
So when you wait. So you've watched 8 hours. What was it like?
I can't get the 8 hours back, basically.
Yeah.
It was twaddle, basically. But we do now know that another series has been commissioned and filmed. And I believe it was filmed in January. So what we're going to get, though, is... Clearly, there were a lot of very negative reviews, so they've already shot it, so presumably they aren't, unless they edit it slightly differently, it might be more of the same, which if we see more food being put into more plastic bags, then I think we really are scraping the barrel. There was nothing, there didn't seem to be too much original about it. So it is interesting. Her contract comes up for renew there with Netflix in, I think, a couple of months, so it will be interesting. So it may have been that they just wanted to get the value for money out of the Sussexes, and that's what they've done.
I mean, you know, you can argue it a number of ways, but what it has done, Netflix loves the controversy. Everyone's talking about it. They're all saying, I mean, there's some brilliant lines here. Who was this? One of the reviewers said it was a gormless lifestyle filler with a tangible desperation.
I don't know. I can't tell you exactly who said that, but that is very much par for the course. Yeah. I think, you know, this is the problem. There's nothing new about it. There are lifestyle programs left, right and centre. There's nothing original. But actually, as you know, sometimes there's no such thing as bad publicity. So for Netflix, they must be going, you know, sometimes that something awful people watch out of a sort of ghoulish fascination. But as you open up the first episode, you've got the bees, and then within 10 minutes, you've got the now much parodied moment of salted pretzels being put into a plastic bag for a guest who was coming to stay that night, which was going to be put into a box and then carried up to her house where this guy was staying, her long-standing makeup artist. It's been much lampooned, but it set the tone, and basically just right labels seem to be the other thing. And she does have very nice writing, but you know, but apart from that, there's not much else.
Is that the best comment, that she's got good writing?
Well, I don't know. I've seen it. I mean, mine's absolutely appalling. I don't know what your penmanship's like, David.
Oh, but I'm a proper doctor. You can't read it.
Oh, right. So no chance then. No. Absolutely zero chance. Anyway, hers is neat and tidy.
Right. I love this one. It says, this was another reviewer. This is The Telegraph. The series is an exercise in narcissism filled with extravagant brunches, celebrity pals and business plugs.
Yes, well, the main thing is, one of the business plugs is you can get, there must be a part of As Ever, they may be selling $20 balloon pumping machines, because she proudly potted one as she was blowing up some balloons for a children's tea party, which we never saw. And then they were proceeding to give them some party bags that had the most extraordinary non-children friendly things in them.
Like what?
Anyway. Well, there were some seeds, manuka honey, just generally. Anyway, I disagree with the party bag concept, because when you go to a party, you should be giving to the person who's giving it, not expecting something in return. But that's maybe I'm an old fuddy-duddy when it comes to children's tea parties.
I think it's very American.
Well, I think over here you now have to...
Oh, do you?
Parties, you know, children's get upset if they judge parties by the party bags. I believe.
But in my day, you got a piece of moist cake wrapped in some sort of napkin, so it all leaked through, and you were lucky to get that.
Well, exactly, but I think that things have changed, David. Party bags are the thing, but as obviously Meghan is telling us that. Make sure the child feels appreciated.
Right.
All right. Well, I've seen some of your Meghan commentary, and honestly, I laughed so hard I cried. Was it 8 hours of your life basically that you'll never get back, or was there anything redeeming in that pile of you know what?
It was roughly 90 minutes of my life that I will never get back.
Nice.
Because I did not watch all 8.
Nice.
I couldn't. I took your advice. You were the one who said your intel was watch episodes 1, 2, and 8. So that's exactly what I did. And for me, episode 2 was so like, Kinsey, I'm Sussex now.
Yeah, I know you. I know.
That said everything. Like, what a colossal, narcissistic, semi-sadistic piece of work she is. You invite somebody not only into your fake home to do your fake cooking show and call her a friend. This does not seem to be a dear friend. And you correct her on camera about your surname that is news to everybody. You're the expert. You probably know whether it's even applicable to her as an actual surname. And then on top of that, okay, again, Mindy Kaling, never forget, actress, producer, friend, in order of importance, as she is Chiron, is a single mother by choice. She has 3 children. And Meghan goes on to try to cover her tracks after hurling this insult her way by saying, well, it's just so important that we all share the same last name. Like, I share my last name with my children, and that's so meaningful. And it's like, well, is Mindy sharing her last name with her children any less meaningful? I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, from what I understand, technically, she could use the Sussex surname. Very loosely could, because the examples were given is Prince William and Prince Harry being, William Wales and Harry Wales when they were in the service. Additionally, the York daughters. But every example that anyone gives when fighting for this is giving the example of somebody that was born into this world. Princess Diana was never Diana Wales, ever.
True.
Catherine was never Catherine Cambridge, ever. So it does feel like Harry and Meghan breaking protocol yet again, because they just don't like the rules and setting up their own rules. And you're right. None of us had heard that she was Meghan Sussex. We did hear around the end of last year that Archie and Lily were going to be referred to as Archie and Lily Sussex. And it was like, okay. But I don't think any of us just assumed, and Meghan would have been angry if we had, that she was going to be Meghan Sussex, because she said on Oprah Winfrey 4 years ago, almost to the day, and said that the royal family almost stole her name. Like, she lost this, she lost that, I almost lost my name. So we were under the impression that feminist Meghan was proud to keep her last name Markle.
Great point. And, really just to cut to the chase, none of us care.
Exactly.
She's calling herself. We care only in as much as it just goes to the rank hypocrisy of her unending enterprise to be beloved and famous, which is that she has said this family didn't care if she lived or died. Mm-hmm. Remember the suicidal ideations when she was pregnant and nobody was allowing her to seek mental help. Cough, cough. Yet she then clings to the very names that one would think be a reminder of such terrible trauma.
That's the truth. Let's talk about this post from Meghan where she is celebrating her 2nd season. And now we're understanding that, according to insiders talking to multiple UK outlets, this was to distract from all of the negative press. This post was to distract from, Variety, The Hollywood Reporter. I think I even saw Vogue saying she's completely...
Your local penny saver.
Yeah, exactly. They, according to sources, this was a strategy by Meghan and Netflix to distract from that and change the narrative to Meghan got a second season. But according to Deadline, it was 2 seasons that were always greenlit, likely out of desperation to release something when there would be product available. In a Daily Mail article, and this is how I envisioned it, so it made sense to me. It was the same as when they released the Harry and Meghan series originally into 2 parts, or when they released The Crown into 2 parts. You get the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then you get the last few episodes at a later date. Did you get that sense that Meghan was like so desperately trying to do a victory lap when clearly she had failed yet again in the public eye?
I actually interpret it as Meghan is so delusional. She has convinced herself that this is a victory and a victory lap worth taking. And despite all the quote unquote haters, she got season 2 from Netflix. Now, this is my theory. Much like you were saying, The Crown broke up 1 season into 2. Do you remember The Sopranos when it was their final season? They shot it all at once. It was season 7. I think they called it A and B. But really what that was a way to avoid having to pay the actors their built-in mega raises for the next season. So it was just corporate bookkeeping. And I think that's what's going on here. I think Netflix shot the whole thing in one go. That seems to be the reporting. They can now have time to try to edit or reshoot or make Meghan a little bit more palatable, which I'm sorry is a Sisyphean task. She is unlikable. I think she should just lean in to being a bitch. Just lean in.
Amen. I feel the same way. Now, when you say that, because yes, I'm reading back to back. We know that the show is already shot, which to me, the headline shouldn't be Meghan got a second season. The headline should be they made the mistake of shooting it so soon before they could get any real feedback. And now it's going to be the same recycled garbage that we saw a few days ago. But when it comes to this quote unquote second season, I felt like the fact that they released the information so soon about it coming out and the fact that it already had been shot reflected that Netflix did not want to draw out this contract at all anymore. We know that this year the contract comes up. So it felt like a rush to get it all done so that Netflix realistically wouldn't have to go back to the negotiating table if she was at all inconvenienced and had to record any bit more than what her contractual obligations were. Do you get the feeling that this was hurried up? Because, I mean, it took her 5 years to do this. She's had this Netflix contract for 5 years now.
I know, it's really remarkable, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah.
And in watching the show, the bits I could stomach it because it really was. As I've said, I love a good bad watch. I love to watch really good, pulpy, bad stuff. I love to watch stuff that kind of knows it's bad and is like telegraphing that to you. And the disconnect here between the product she thinks she's putting out and the actual product itself, it's like it's like the Red Sea parting. That's how wide this chasm is. I just don't see what Netflix gets out of renewing this deal. We know all reports have Ari Emanuel at WME icing her out, dumping her. She's now like with the B team, the C team at WME. She threw yet another fit apparently about plans for her future. I'd love to know when the podcast is coming out. I read that the podcast then had been like bumped up to this spring, which seems inconceivable to me because, Kinsey, here's the thing. I thought while watching this show, she had so much time to workshop her patter, what she was going to say. She had a lot of time to think about the guests, the quote unquote friends she was going to have on, and her dynamics with them, her interpersonal relationships, and none of it, like the best she could come up with was walking out to her beehive, half dressed in the beekeeper's uniform, saying things like, busy bees. The round table and Dorothy Parker, this is not.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so painfully true. Yeah. I wonder, because I said to somebody, I felt like what a stronger docuseries would have been, would the behind the scenes watching her build her next podcast. And somebody was like, it's too inside baseball. And I said, at least that way I'd get some sort of glimpse of a work ethic. But organizing fruit on a tray, it looks very silly and like a waste of time and resources, not to mention, like her dad said, $90 worth of fruit. I had somebody a few minutes ago ask me on air about why her family was going after her again. And I said, and normally I'd be like, oh, that feels yucky. But this time it felt kind of justified because she's rewriting history. And I also felt like she is saying to the world, everyone's invited, come over to my house, look at my lovely friends and family. And her family sitting back going, we're not invited. Why are you trying to make it like you're Miss Homemaker when you don't talk to half the people you grew up with?
Exactly. So the fundamental premise of her show is fraudulent, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how to make a happy home, a warm, loving environment, despite severing ties with nearly every member of my family of origin, save my mother, and successfully severing my husband's ties from his entire family of origin. And I'm going to make sure my children bear this royal name, but they will know nothing of their unique family history. They will know nothing of their relatives. They will have no relationships with them. I find it quite sick. I find it sick. And I think this is why people are really recoiling from this project in particular. It feels like a giant lie, and that Meghan is so invested in showing us how perfect she is.
Mm-hmm.
For a cooking show, there's not a single mistake made. There's not a single, when you look at her, like with that, whatever pasta dish she was trying to make in the Le Creuset pan, and everything's white, and the pan is white, and there's not even a splatter of nothing. Like everything's immaculate, and it's not real. It's not the way the average American is living. And I don't want to see her out in her chicken coop with her effing picnic table, her miniature picnic table, so her chickens can eat their slop off a table. So that, and she literally brings them out. I mean, I'm sure you saw this, Kinsey,
Yeah.
like the big semicircle of ice that was filled with organic veggies.
And you're just sitting there thinking, they literally ran out of fire when they were trying to bring the Palisades fire down. And Meghan's got enough
water. Yes.
Yeah, they ran out of water.
Great point.
To take out the Palisades fire, but Meghan's got enough water to ice giant chicken baths, chicken treats. That's so crazy. I can't.
Her chickens eat better than the majority of Americans.
Yes, it was just so, everything looked so wasteful to me. And I just thought, oh, who can do this? I will sit there and stare at a tiny box of strawberries for 30 minutes trying to figure out, which box is best, which is going to stretch me through 2 weeks or whatever. And Meghan Markle's got like 6 months worth of strawberries on her table.
Now we finally we learned over the weekend to our astonishment that there will be a second series. Don't get too excited, folks. When they filmed the first series, they filmed the second at the same time. Old technique. That means you've got a whole series ready of very, very cheap television, which Netflix will probably just chuck out there. I don't think they're excited by it, to say the least. So don't read anything into that, because Meghan was acting like, oh, look, I've just got the great news. My series, With Love Meghan, has been so successful that Netflix are announcing that they're going to make a second series. No, they've already made it. And they always were going to screen it. And finally now, it looks like Netflix might be the last to have realised, but they're picking up on these universally bad reviews. The critics panned it. The public were furious. The public hated it, particularly kids on TikTok. Everybody hated this. The only people who didn't hate it were Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, as far as I can work out. But we're now learning that actually, to their credit, Netflix are very worried about the reviews and very worried about the lack of success of this programme. That is the truth. that this series, the first series, everybody hates it because it's so boring, it's so irrelevant, it's so pointless. Some ridiculous woman going around saying, here's a recipe for ice cubes. We don't need recipes for ice cubes, we really don't. You can get beeswax from your local beekeeper. What do you mean? I live in the city, I haven't got a local beekeeper. God's sake. Anyway, well, let's talk about all this. Let's talk about it with the brilliant Kinsey Schofield over there on the west coast of America. Hi, Kinsey, how you doing?
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, I think that we anticipated that we were inevitably going to hear these types of rumbles and whispers from the Netflix crew that the return on investment simply is not here. But I can tell you that Meghan is working overtime with her friends over at People Magazine, or as I like to call them, her spokespeople, to generate stories about what a great boss she was behind the scenes. And I'm not talking about the stories we talked about last week. There are more now about how she hired ice cream trucks to, for them during their breaks and all these other little things. So there's definitely an effort to silence the negative stories. I'd also stress that was Meghan announcing her second season on Instagram. Kev, there was no big announcement about a second season. Thanks to Deadline, we know that this was greenlit for 2 seasons originally off the jump, likely contractually instigated by Meghan to avoid looking like a failure from the get-go.
Exactly right. I mean, and if they've got on their hands in the can a very cheap TV series has already been made. It's surprisingly easy to, make 2 episodes as you make 1. So that's what they've done. As you say, normal practice here. She's sort of spun it to look as if Netflix have gone, do you know what? This series 1 is such a success. Let's make another series. They've already made the series, and we're now learning only today, only in the last couple of hours, that actually Netflix, they're not stupid at Netflix. They're extremely concerned about the very poor reviews that everybody gave this series, and probably more importantly in terms of mass appeal, the fact that all over social media, especially TikTok, audiences are hating it, particularly young people.
Yeah, and so there's another story out. So now we have 2 separate outlets saying that they have spoken to sources within Netflix. One is the Daily Mail, the other is the Express. And in the Express article, they specifically say Meghan's big announcement was a strategy by Netflix and Meghan on Instagram. That was something that they came up with to distract from the incredibly hateful reviews that were coming in about her series. And it's from outlets that are typically very glowing of her. She appeared on the cover of Variety magazine, and they were the ones that called it an ego trip. I think it was Vogue that said that it lacked authenticity. And if you thought you were going to get to know more about Meghan Markle, this wasn't the venue. So even outlets that are typically very thoughtful, over the top butt kissing of Meghan Markle, they were dismissive of this project. And as you and I both have talked about over the last few years, this is really make or break, and it looks, to people that aren't invested, it might look like a professional win for Meghan because she went on Instagram and said this was renewed. Deadline has been reporting, that this was greenlit, from the very beginning of conversations. And so this is all a facade. This is all just more PR, bending over backwards, trying to manipulate the narrative.
Yeah. Now, talking of which, her dad, so we had on this show, on the Political Asylum last week, Thomas Markle Jr., Meghan's brother, was kind enough to come on and give us his disparaging review. He said it was so boring and desperate that he actually felt sorry for her. There was something very desperate and pleading about it. I know what Tom means. But in the papers over here over the weekend, in the Mail on Sunday in particular, her dad, Thomas Markle Sr., Thomas Markle, he got involved. He hated the programme too, found it very, very boring, but was extremely annoyed. Thomas Markle Jr. was as too, with some of her suggestions about her childhood. So she's eating in the show all this sort of fresh fruit that she makes into rainbow colours, nobody knows why, cutting up fresh vegetables, millions of them, cutting vegetables and cutting stop cutting vegetables, do something else for God's sake. Anyway, this, all very fresh. And she says this is wonderful for her because she says, I grew up with a lot of fast food and also a lot of TV tray dinners. It feels like such a different time, but that was so normal with the microwavable kids' meals. Well, she said, I grew up with that, watching Jeopardy and having a lot of fast food. Well, Thomas Markle Sr., I mean, Tom Markle Jr. was angry about that. Thomas Markle Sr. is furious because he was a very successful lighting man. They lived in a nice part of LA, and he said he took his kids out for flashy restaurant meals at least 3 times a week. And they regularly went to Los Angeles' most famous restaurant, a very posh, high-caste restaurant called Musso and Frank on Hollywood Boulevard. So they regularly went there. Hollywood Boulevard, a burger there will cost you $35. So he's saying, you know, that she's acting like I sort of chuck the kids in front of the TV with a cheap TV dinner every night. He said it's just not true. She was not a latchkey kid stuffing her face with fast food. It's not true.
Well, also, first of all, just to further this lie, there's this great clip from Meghan Markle on the Food Network during her TIG days before she meets Prince Harry, where she's judging Chop Jr. And a little girl, a little chef, a child, puts a plate in front of Meghan. And Meghan says, literally, this reminds me of growing up in California, you know, that farm to fork lifestyle that I, you know, like Meghan again saying Meghan lying, saying she's farm to fork when she's on the Food Network as a judge on Chopped Jr. I mean, the inconsistencies are glorious. But I do feel sorry for her father because he talks about working multiple jobs, and he wasn't working multiple jobs, he says, because they were poor. He was working multiple jobs because he was highly skilled and in demand. And so he was busy, you know, pursuing his passion, making a living, and creating a life for Meghan that ultimately opened a lot of doors for her, whether it be at the private school she went to, the college that she was able to attend, or, you know, some of the international internships and things like that she was able to pursue because daddy was paying for it. Daddy was bankrolling her. But yeah, that I felt sorry for him there because you and I've discussed this before, the idea of her rewriting history. That's exactly what this is. She had a really good dad who provided for her very well. She herself wrote in the TIG about going to that cafe that you mentioned after dance class, after ballet class. So she panders pathetically to whatever audience she is trying to win at that exact moment. And they throw so many things at the wall, trying to see what's going to stick. And developing a specific audience is also where they do that too. They are just like, who do we think likes us right now or today? And how can I'm going to be a chameleon right now and say what I think is going to impress that specific person.
Yes. Now, let's talk about the show itself. As we discussed last week, Kinsey, at great length several times, this show came in disappointingly at number 6 in the Netflix charts. So that was overnight. So they opened it like 10 hours later, a day later. It was number 6. Now, when you open a blockbuster show, you expect it to be number 1. You expect it to be number 1 for days on end, maybe even weeks on end. This came in at number 6, very disappointing considering global publicity. It has now plummeted out of the top 10 and is falling fast. So all of her plans to base her business empire on the back of this TV cooking show, they're looking to be in a bit of trouble, aren't they?
Look, she's going to have her core audience that buys the BS blissfully, and they are going to buy the edible flowers. God love them, and that's fine. But you and I both know that her ultimate objective was to gain new followers, was to gain a new audience and to change public perception. And the content is not there. The joke is on Harry and Meghan and Netflix, because while they did, I mean, proof to me that this was greenlit for 2 seasons earlier on is the fact that this entire show, season 2, has already been shot. It's in the can, and they are unable now to go back and make any of the adjustments likely required because of legitimate criticism from TV critics that don't care about who Meghan Markle is married to. They're just there to watch TV and assess it based on entertainment value. And it's not just the projects that are bland and boring. Whether you're making a Pinterest rainbow out of fruit or bath salts, it's the personality that's struggling throughout this thing. It's the lack of authenticity. It's people catching Meghan in bold-faced lies. And that they can't go back and edit that because season 2 is shot. It's done. And unless they want to invest even more money in reshooting things and edits, which I do not think that's where Netflix is at right now, because I understand that they did invest a significant amount in the creation of these products for Meghan. I was reading an older article about you. It was about like right when you'd burst on the scene. And one of the things that the journalist said about you and why they felt like you really were connecting with people was that you were just so fearless and authentic. And I'm watching Meghan Markle's new show, thinking if there is one thing she lacks, it's authenticity. Why is it so hard for her?
Authentic is not her strength, is it? No, I don't know why it's so difficult for her just to be normal, just to be a normal person. You know, not everyone's exciting, not everyone's particularly witty or got something that makes them unique, but I think everyone is pretty much likable if they're authentic. You know, you can give a good representation of just about anybody, particularly if you've got the sort of team she has behind her. And yet, despite all of that, what you see on the screen is so unlikable, it's not relatable, it's inauthentic, as you said, and it just comes off as strange in parts. Like, this is someone who does not exist in the real world. She's in some sort of parallel universe where she thinks what she's producing for this program, this content, is some idealistic version of, you know, of herself. But it just doesn't translate. It doesn't come across that way. So I don't know. I don't know if she's always been like this or whether this has been something since she married into the royal family, but gosh, I didn't like her from the start, I've got to say. And that was unusual. Back in that, like now everyone bags Meghan. It's like a national sport in Australia anyway. But when everybody adored her, when everyone was just so excited about her joining the royal family and she was going to be the best thing, and everyone, because Harry was for so long the favourite along with the Queen, those two were the 2 favourite royals, and they loved Meghan as well. I mean, this is the thing that this couple have tried to memory hold, that, you know, the British press was so nasty and the British public was so, no, she was adored. The adoration was over the top. And I remember, because I was one of the very few here in Australia who was like, Nah, I can see red flags everywhere.
I'm so impressed by that. Do you remember specifically anything that stood out to you as to why? I mean, of course, we can
No.
look back now and be like, okay, only her mom was at her freaking second wedding. I mean, that's crazy. But other than that, she really, to me, played the part well of Little Miss. I'm so blessed to be here. I'm so lucky to be
It
here.
was too much. To me, was again, I just saw that it was inauthentic to me from the start. It was too much. I felt like she was putting on like she was putting on an act. It was not genuine. It was almost too syrupy. So no, I don't know. I just right from the start, I was like, I'm not buying whatever this girl's selling. And in the
And now
early
it's
days,
jam. Now it's jam that she's selling, by the way.
now she's well, is she? Because I don't think you can actually order any jams. I'm fascinated by this bizarre wellness website. Was it lifestyle website she has with a stupid name that she's now changed? That doesn't seem to actually sell anything. So I'm wondering where's the income coming from? Because normally when you get into that sort of business, you do some business. She's not selling anything, Kinsey. What's going on?
Exactly. Well, you are in the business of TV, making good TV. And, when we work in this space, we're constantly looking at analytics and numbers. And they've even got it down to when people switch off the TV. So people can tell you, hey, this person, they don't like when you talk about this topic. So let's not talk about this topic anymore. Now, Meghan Markle, and we've talked about the new show, For the Love of God, has a second season coming out. It's already been filmed. Exactly. It's already been filmed. But what nobody has reported yet, except for Deadline Hollywood here, has reported that Meghan had the second season already greenlit. So my question to you is, as an entertainer, perhaps did Meghan's team secure the 2 seasons before agreeing to do anything to avoid the humiliation of being canceled because these shows are cheap, to avoid the humiliation?
Well, they're not doing her any favors by having a second season. I'm sure they're doing themselves favors because it keeps them in a job. So good for them. But unless the content is going to be dramatically different, and I don't know how that's going to be the case with her as the subject matter as well as being an executive producer, unless it's going to be a dramatic different program, no one's interested. People are watching just to mock it. People are watching it for giggles and for mockery. It's so I don't know why she would want to be presented like that. I mean, it's not like she needs the money. It's not like she needs the fame. People know who she is. So why she subjects herself to this is beyond me. I don't know if she's just poorly advised. She's got a bunch of yes people around her who say, well, this is going to change your public persona. Everyone's going to love this Meghan version of Meghan. But I just don't understand why, if you've got the life she has, she's a mum of 2 young kids, she's got all the money that she'll ever need, she's got the fame, why produce absolutely full content that is just going to be mocked, that is just no good? And it's not even like, if it was a passion project and she didn't care about the criticism, she just wanted to get some, but this is not a passion project. It's vacuous. It's just the worst of reality TV. It makes Keeping Up with the Kardashians seem like Citizen Kane. This is trash. I mean, at least Keeping Up with the Kardashians, it's got raw bits. Yeah, it's overproduced in other parts, but there's things there that would make those individuals feel uncomfortable about it being aired. But they understand that if you want to get a bundle of money for showcasing your life, you've actually got to showcase a few real pieces, not just the glossy version that you want the world to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with, social media evolving the way it is. The videos that get the most views and likes are people sitting in their car, are, very bizarre and raw, and it's not the beautiful fruit tray that's typically going to win over when it comes to
The rainbow fruit tray? Was it
Yeah.
rainbow?
Yes.
Like what? Why? Why would you do that? I mean, who does that? I mean, maybe if you were throwing some elaborate party and you were going to do a massive fruit tray and you thought, oh, yeah, I've got the time to do this in some sort of a rainbow formation. But to sort of be doing, oh, this is like my everyday life. I, go to the bees and then I make some bath salts and move some pretzels from one bag to another. Like, what? This is the thing with this. It's not even, sometimes reality TV is not relatable, but it's aspirational in a way, or entertaining. So, you look at the Real Housewives series and you got the women with these, lifestyles that are maybe out of reach to people, but there's some aspirational factor and there's certainly some, drama and trash there that also keeps them entertained. I can't imagine anyone watching this would be aspiring to have what she has. Like, I wish I could go home and, make a massive fruit platter in a rainbow shape, like it, or have people around who are obviously not lifelong friends, who I'm pretending are lifelong friends, and cooking a meal together. Like, none of it to me was appealing in that sense. And I think, again, that's another miss. There's a certain formula for reality TV, and this is what this is. Let's not pretend it's some documentary or lifestyle cooking series. It's essentially reality TV, but it's reality TV done really poorly.
After 3 months of darkness and drab, dreary January and February, finally the spring sunshine has come out. And of course, it was St. David's Day, and we had Prince William out and about, well, with Kate in Wales, and also delivering an address for St. David's Day as well. So in a new Instagram post that he shared on Saturday, he shared footage of him and Kate doing that visit, meeting fans in Wales. The crowds were cheering, the sun was out, they were given bouquets of flowers, they were waving Welsh flags, and they had a really, really, I think, wonderful reception. You have to remember that they are, of course, the Prince and Princess of Wales, and that after the coronation, the first place that they visited, in fact, was Wales. They've always had a lovely connection with this country, particularly because it's the country where actually they spent a lot of their early relationship after they left Scotland and St Andrews. They moved to Anglesey, where William was working as a search and rescue pilot. So they were very much embraced by the Welsh community. They clearly love the country. They love the people. And William went all out. He spoke fluent Welsh whilst addressing his followers, and he's had a mixed response. Apparently he's been learning the language on Duolingo, which is a language learning app.
Yeah.
I was reading that apparently a language professor at Cardiff University said he thought William sounded a little stilted and he could have done better. I have to say, I know Wales is only, not far from us here in England, but it's a really hard language to learn. It's a beautiful language, but hard to learn. And I actually thought he did pretty well in his delivery. And I just think it was very touching that he chose to give his whole speech in Welsh, because up until now, Kinsey, we've only heard him sort of give us little snippets in Welsh, haven't we? We've never heard him speak so fluently in Welsh.
It was so handsome. And I remember watching not only Princess Diana, but his father do it, and it being very meaningful at the time to hear his parents invest so much time into, and effort into, there was a comment I saw on one of the articles about just how people felt like it was respectful of their culture and their traditions. And to me, it is beautiful seeing so much change in the modernization of the monarchy, to see somebody say, actually, this is important to me, and I want to honor Wales this way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, King Charles, he had actually quite a formal introduction to Welsh. He learnt the Welsh language, and he studied back in 1969 at a Welsh university, and that was before his investiture as Prince of Wales. So his Welsh is excellent and faultless. But of course, remember, William didn't have an investiture as Prince of Wales. He hasn't done that whole investiture at Carnarvon Castle. I remember being told by Kensington Palace at the time that it was nothing to do with being a snub to the Welsh people. He loves Wales, but he felt it was quite archaic. You were just talking, weren't you, about the modernisation of the monarchy? He obviously felt that this was archaic and didn't sit right with his sort of modern vision of the monarchy. But I think when we see him doing these trips to Wales, it almost becomes more meaningful, I think, to the people of Wales than a stiff, formal, stuffy investiture. He's actually out there, he's meeting the people. He and Kate went and made Welsh cakes on a visit a couple of days before, had some gorgeous footage of the two of them doing that. They visited a Welsh bakery. Kate revealed that William had been practicing at home and brushing up on his baking skills and Googling how to make Welsh cakes. They served them at a they served them to locals, had a chance to interact with the people. And I think, obviously lovely that the Prince and the Princess of Wales were together. We're seeing more and more of the Princess of Wales out in public, which is just so inspiring and so wonderful and so hopeful, I think, for everyone. And lovely to see them out on the ground and meeting people. So to me, doing that ahead of St. David's Day, and then William giving this address on Instagram, again, very, very modern on St. David's Day. Just, I think he's got the tone right. I mean, maybe this professor didn't think his delivery was pitch perfect, but I think he got the tone right. And from everything we've seen on the footage, I mean, I wasn't actually there on the engagement, but from everything I've seen, it looks like he was both of them were really well received.
Can I ask you a question before we move on really quickly? We're hyper aware of Harry and Meghan's solo engagements or appearances. And when it comes to William and Catherine, I have felt like over the last few years, pre-cancer, that we saw Catherine out a lot more by herself, to the point where I was like overjoyed to see them together in Wales. And I didn't realize how much I missed seeing them together, interacting. They flirt with each other and it's not just the holding hands in public, because I saw those headlines. It's great to see them holding hands while in public transport. But I also just love watching the way that they interact with each other, because it very much feels flirtatious and sweet. Now, I guess I'm not as hyper aware when they are separated. I guess I just kind of got used to them doing independent ventures, because I think Catherine really does want her heart and soul to be in early learning and some of those causes that she really truly is invested in and believes in. But might we see them together more often? Because I really enjoy seeing them together.
I think you are sort of typical of most royal fans, in that it's always wonderful to see them doing their solo work. And you're right, before she had to take time off for her operation and her cancer treatment, I think we were seeing more of the Princess of Wales out and about on her own, doing these solo projects, really investing her time into the early years, which has been very much her thing. But you know what, Kinsey, it's interesting, because I'm thinking back to some of the earliest engagements, before they got married, in the early years of their marriage, and they did do so much together. And I think that was because Kate was learning the ropes and getting used to life as a royal. And then we sort of saw her doing her own speeches, not necessarily dependent on William in the way that I think she was early on in her royal career. And I agree with you. I think it's so lovely that now that she is back at work and clearly loving it so much, we've seen her do some wonderful solo engagements, but how lovely to see them out and about in Wales, and important as the Prince and Princess of Wales. And I think, to your point about joint engagements, they do. I think they do tend to get more attention, because it's lovely to see William and Catherine interacting the way that they do. And you can see there's a lot of banter, a little bit of rivalry over who's made the better Welsh cakes, who's the tastiest. Kate ribbing William a bit that he'd been checking up on Google on how to make them and practicing ahead of time. And I think all of that just puts a lovely natural charm into a royal engagement. And I just think it's it's really lovely to see.
We have some positive news here in the States, but I'm going to kick it your way about popularity when it comes to the British royal family. This is something I felt always felt like this was the way it was, but thanks to a new YouGov poll, we have confirmation that Americans prefer Prince William over Prince Harry. Oddly, they kept deceased royals on this list, and Princess Diana is actually who dominates the list, with Queen Elizabeth underneath that, and then Prince William and Prince Harry. He emerged triumphant in the Battle of the Brothers with a 58% approval rating versus Harry's 53% approval rating. Knowing you as well as I do, I suspect you're not surprised by this development. Is it similar in the UK, do you think?
I think you'll probably find there probably is a wider gap, because obviously this is the reason I would say that is because obviously we have, the people in this country, it's about the monarchy. Whereas in America, I think you're going to have a more nuanced view, because obviously you're getting a different perspective of the royal family. And it is interesting that the Princess Diana is at the top of the pops, as it were, even though she's been dead since 1997. It does show her influence and the impact that she made on a global scale. And it is still relevant today. And obviously she's her at various landmarks. Her presence still looms large over the royal family. It is interesting that I think there's only a 5% gap. And actually, when I first looked at it, I went, that's not as big as I thought it would, as I say, because over here I do think there is much more resentment towards Prince Harry, given the way he's been has spoken about the British royal family here. So we're probably finding slightly protective. So they probably take a rather more dim view in this country. Now, of course, I have nothing apart from my gut feeling to work on. And as you say, you talked about your gut feeling there. So I'm actually more surprised that they're as close as they are. So all is not lost then in the eyes of the American public of this poll. If he's got more than 50% in his favour, then I think he might just say that that's not too bad given what's been going on recently.
Were you disappointed at all by where King Charles and Camilla, the Queen, the new Queen, landed on this poll? Because like I said, I recently had to have this discussion and I was caught off guard, so I didn't have the analytics in front of me. But again, my gut feeling said that Americans still had a lot of love for Princess Diana, so that there might be some resentment towards King Charles and Queen Camilla. However, I hoped and assumed, due to his cancer diagnosis, that there would be some sympathy there and that it might have changed some hearts around. So are you a little disappointed by where he lands on the map?
I'm not surprised, because I think, he's got to probably be out there public facing in America, and he hasn't. And so I think there's probably, it's more probably ambivalence, not knowing him as a personality. Like William and Harry have been much more out there, and obviously, as I alluded to in Princess Diana, Queen Camilla would be in the same boat, but there still would be, the more conservative side of America taking a view about the Queen Camilla from the, the breakup of the marriage. And given Princess Diana's popularity, there's always going to be a swing in her favour. That would be my take on it to some extent. But overall, not really surprised. I think the important thing is that they still have, there's a fascination within the British royal family. We know there's been a fascination with regard to whatever Meghan and Harry do. There is always a fascination about the Prince and Princess of Wales. So I think we have to put it into context. The King, I think needs to probably become more familiar. Look, it's a work in progress over here. There was a degree of sort of not quite sure what to expect from the King, but obviously with the cancer diagnosis and but now trying to get out there as much as possible, I think there's a much more favourable view to him here, because there was always a bit concerned how his passions in life, environmentalists, and how he'd be able to navigate his way in his current situation as the King now. So I think it's a work in progress in America. But as I say, the only 5% gap between Harry and William, certainly when I looked through it, just gave me a little surprise.
I don't think anyone in the world knows that Meghan Markle has eaten Jack in the Box and loves it.
It's so funny, too, that you keep saying Meghan Markle. I'm Sussex now.
Well, I hope that Mindy was getting paid well. She probably was, because that was horrible. What a nasty thing to do to a guest in your kitchen, right, Simon?
It's not her kitchen.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake. I stand corrected.
OK, I liked her. I didn't find her... Wait there.
The worst parts.
No, I just found her... She was really inoffensive. Really inoffensive. But
what about when she cuts Mindy dead?
I didn't really care. I only watched two
that's not nice. Why did you like her then?
I only watched 2 episodes of that. I watched Gordon Ramsay.
You know, it's so funny you say that. It's Meghan Markle. It's not Meghan Markle anymore. It's Meghan Sussex.
Yeah. Even though I claim that we're best friends, you don't know my real name.
I watched Gordon Ramsay swearing at people, and I don't mind that, so it didn't bother me. I'm not a snowflake. I don't get angry about her shouting at Mindy Kaling. But what I would say is, if she is responsible for not allowing herself to be produced, where is the content in that show? Nobody's gone out and done anything. Nigella wanders around markets to source the material. There's nothing in that show. That's what's wrong with it.
Totally agree.
And that's a producer's fault. And Netflix's fault.
Someone's fault, and as you quite rightly say, it's not her kitchen, but she spends nearly all the time in it.
Yeah,
get out. I mean, the beehive bit, if you must, get out there and do something else. Don't just stand in your kitchen the whole time chucking spaghetti into one pot. We've got to play some more clips, so I'm going to have to ask you to shut up. This is Meghan with an astonishing revelation about that ginger, dim husband of hers.
I have a family, a husband, who, no matter what meal is put in front of him, before he tastes it, puts salt on. So I try to undersalt.
I love knowing that your husband likes it salty.
Do you try to undersalt? Do you undersalt?
That's a good joke in there, though, Mindy Kaling.
Well, Mindy's quite funny, and I thought very likeable. You want to talk about likeable? She was likeable, and she handled that bitter approach by Meghan with real class and charm.
People should Google Mindy Kaling, though.
Mindy, I like Mindy.
She's
not a likeable.
She is one
By
of
the
the
way,
most
I'll tell you who I didn't like. That Daniel. What a tosser. Right, here's Meghan talking about her fabled jam.
I received that in the mail, a box of your preserves.
Yes.
It was probably one of the most glamorous moments of my life.
Mindy, as we just said, we like Mindy.
I don't.
She received some jam in the mail from Meghan. Probably one of the most glamorous moments of her life, apparently. Mindy, if you're watching, you need to get out more. You really do. Would you find that glamorous, receiving a pot of jam?
Sorry, Mindy's one of those celebrities who I absolutely love, but she is one of those Hollywood people that try to cling on to anyone because they have got an inherent low self-esteem. I mean, her and Bean...
I don't know that.
No. Wow, all of a sudden you guys don't have evidence for something and you're worried about it.
No, but it is interesting because it's the only A-lister she could get to come on the show. That was quite interesting.
When you say A-lister, I'd never heard of her.
Okay,
but no, she was in the office, right? So she.
Yeah, exactly.
And I liked her.
But we have to talk. Just to go back to the show. She is Meghan Markle is inoffensive and harmless in it. I think that.
Well, have you seen TikTok?
If she has
that's not what the kids think.
No, but if she has been,
you're the only person who likes her. Everybody hates her.
I'm not the only person.
TikTok?
I am not the only person.
Avalanche of hate.
I am not the only person who likes her, and I am indifferent to her. I'm just not spiteful, and I just don't find everything she does cause concern like you guys do.
This show is a farewell letter. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. But as I mentioned in my monologue, at one point she makes this monstrous cake about this big, useless at making it. She doesn't like baking. She says, it's not my favourite thing. But she does it anyway for friends because she's so lovely. Well, here she is.
There's something really satisfying about a cake that is bare on the outside, but she's so beautiful on the inside. And you just don't know how good she is until you go deep and you get to know her better.
Don't pass that judgment.
I know.
No one knows your business.
What's interesting about this, I mean, if you can separate the woman from the content that's in there, I don't mind the woman. I find the content really dull. There's just stuff in there that's really surprising. She's got beehives, yeah? She says at the beginning, we've had them for a year. Her bee outfit is pristine. They don't go out of the kitchen at all. It's somebody else's kitchen and they feel the need to mention it. There's kind of the first guest is
Come
sort of
on,
some...
Simon.
Wait,
she
the
comes
first guest-
across as a lobotomized Stepford wife.
She
Let's
does,
be
yeah,
real.
a lobotomized Stepford
Yeah,
wife.
she
really
does,
good
honestly.
friend.
No.
She really does.
She doesn't.
She comes across awfully.
I didn't find that.
My God, I always say this about her. At some point in her life, she's swallowed a bucket full of boring pills. She can't even say a word without being
That is a
tedious.
producer.
She is so boring.
That is a producer.
This programme is a mountain of tedious.
That is the producer's fault. Where is Netflix in all of this? If it's so badly cut and everything else, why can't
They don't care about this
No,
show.
because...
Kevin mentioned she has one of the best producers in the industry, someone who's produced Anthony Bourdain. Oh my God, they can't even make her look interesting,
But
and
Anthony
that's the problem.
Bourdain was always on location. There was always something to look at. There was always something to go for.
Yes,
that
but-
producer keeping
They
her in
could
that
have walked
kitchen.
around the garden or the yard, as they call it.
You needed more beehive stuff and
You
stuff
did,
like
you
that.
did, I agree
and
with
I
that.
just think that where's Netflix in all of this?
Anyway,
where are they? But
I'll tell you
guys have
I'll
binged
tell you
it.
where they are. I'll tell you where they are jettisoning this programme. They don't care about it.
You guys...
So when I went, stop talking with you, Simon. You're biting in all the bloody time. Can we get a word in? Samara's hardly spoken. So, when I sat down to watch it a couple of mornings ago, because I had to, because I was about to interview her brother, Thomas Markle Jr., so I had to watch the show. So I sat down, I've got to watch it. So I get to Netflix and I'm going, oh my God, where is it? I can't find it. Oh my God, I don't think I can get to watch it. It was way down. They didn't even banner announce it on the day that it was launched. I think Netflix have already washed their hands of this, but the handy thing, folks, we all now know, thanks to Meghan, that we can get beeswax from our local beekeeper. Where I live, we don't have local beekeepers. We have local criminals and local knife wielders and local gunmen and local gangs. We live in cities, Meghan, but here is Meghan and Daniel spending about 4 hours making candles.
We just made candles. Should I put a little label on it? Should I write something? Daniel's Candles?
Daniel's Candles. He's gonna be so happy.
Sweet. And then this we're gonna call Come Back to Montecito Candle.
Look, I mean, the thing about this...
Pathetic.
Yeah, she tries to insert these sort of relatable moments into it. You can go to your local beekeeper. To be fair to her, she goes, you can find beeswax online. The thing that she doesn't acknowledge is that people are time poor. They're not just money lacking at the moment. People don't actually have time to rearrange vegetables into a rainbow-coloured thing. People don't have time to make candles because they're trying to pay bills, Meghan. What about that don't you understand? It just doesn't, the lack of disconnect, and we talk about a Stepford wife, she does seem to live in this gilded golden cage of Montecito where she can't leave.
What's the point of, taking a bag of shop-produced pretzels, opening the shop bag and then getting another plastic bag, pouring them in, and then putting a bow and a little label on? What is the point of that?
Also, what is the eco angle there? Let's save the planet, nature baby warrior.
Yeah, no. Well, let me tell you. You talked about her creating the rainbow of the fruit. Why? Why bother? By the way, she goes, I love to give the kids bags of seeds and a flower pot to plant them in. Yeah, I bet the kids are really thrilled with that. Right, you talked about the rainbow fruit. Well, that wasn't the only rainbow moment in this brilliant show. She put rainbow sparkles on a frittata, which is basically an omelette that you shove in the oven.
And then we have a frittata.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm plating for you as well because I can't help it.
What are you sprinkling on it?
Flour sprinkles.
What? Are you Tinkerbell? This is crazy.
Your kids will like this.
Yes, do they add flavor or is it decorative?
It's just an accessory.
That's like what she is to Harry.
And that's just an omelette. I mean, all of her recipes were so crap. They're so mundane, what did she call it? A single skillet spaghetti. And she gets some pasta, shoves it in a bowl, throws the fruit tomatoes in, boils it up, that's it. And then she uses the water that she boiled the pasta in as a sauce.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
So
that'll be $100 million, Netflix. That'll be
just a couple
$100
of
million.
things.
She's not a very good cook.
But just a couple of things, okay? Sort of, are you watching this? You're obviously not the target audience.
I'm watching it as a TV critic.
Yeah, listening to your Netflix, listening to it not appearing on your Netflix. You're not being served this up, okay? So that's one thing. Another thing is, if you can separate the person from the content. The content is poorly produced and it's dull and it's bad. I watched it and I don't have a problem with her. I found it dull because I just didn't find it a very well-produced show. But I do have to say, sorry, Kev,
I'm getting used to this. Carry on, Simon.
Apart
read a book.
Apart from her snapping at Mindy, what was it about her that you kind of found just so off-putting?
Very fake, not very nice, undercurrent of nastiness, particularly in that exchange with Mindy.
Yeah.
And just a fraud, an absolute fraud. You know, oh, look at me, aren't I lovely? I'm making some coffee for the cameraman. Well, we know how she treats her staff. Also, I mean, as I said in my monologue, does she actually have any friends, or just renters celebs or C-list celebs, and also her own staff, like that Daniel dork? But while she's wafting around, you know, in her carefully dressed down clothes. It's been estimated that in this series she wears £130,000 worth of designer clothes. Here she is talking about her garments.
Can you tell me about your clothes?
Yes, I like high-low, so Zara.
What?
Laura Piana.
Nice.
Jenny Kane.
Sarah! Oh my God, she's so down to earth.
Yeah.
That kind of crap. That's why I don't like her. Who the hell does she think she's kidding? As I say, it's been estimated that in 8 parts, this 8-part dirge, 40 minutes each. Oh my God. I dare anyone to try to stay awake. She wears £130,000. That's $150,000 worth of designer clothes.
This is why the younger people are starting to hate her, because for a lot of young people, Zara is actually not a very cheap brand. And also the other thing that she mentions all the time is that she's, you know, you could get a cheaper version of this here, you could get a cheaper version of that there. I don't think it's very helpful. She's not the girl next door. I struggle to find a mother who would be cooking in all white. I just seriously, I don't
she's
understand.
Presenting it. I mean,
I get that. I mean, she's
just
not going to be wearing a boiler suit. But
because you guys really don't like her. There's no objective.
I have no real feelings about her. I just think.
Come on.
I don't. You know.
You do have feelings about her.
I'll tell you what I think about Meghan. I think she's very interesting. I think the whole phenomenon of Meghan's very interesting. The whole phenomenon of Meghan and Harry is very interesting. I don't dislike her. I neither dislike her nor like her.
Nobody's going to believe that.
There's an element of shaming people, though. She even references her childhood TV dinners, junk food, drive-thrus. There are a lot of mothers that just have to do that. I don't know why she's acting all high and mighty now.
Yeah,
now that she's a highfalutin, a Sussex, as she likes to say.
She's trying to sort of play the down-to-earth housewife, the super mum, and she doesn't just make sandwiches.
I wish I had told Mr. Ben how much it meant to me and how much I learned and how much I retained from that, because he taught me how to compost and he taught me about the garden, and look at how sweet that is.
Beautiful. Meg, I think this is gonna blow your mind. A little Christine butterfly.
That's so good.
I just want to be sick.
I am very mindful it is Commonwealth Day tomorrow. The Commonwealth, a third of the world's population, a very important part of, obviously, the King is the head of the Commonwealth. It's an interesting point, this, because the King is now sort of walking this tightrope, because you've got the United States saying they're going to reclaim Canada as the 51st state. Of course, Justin Trudeau not very happy about all of that. Meanwhile, the King is being wheeled out to appease Donald Trump. Now, as part of Commonwealth Day, he's released a musical playlist, hasn't he?
Yes, well, Bob Marley, who knew that he's very fond of a bit of Bob Marley, and goes back a long time. And, you know, he's had, and he believed Bob Marley, Kylie Minogue, I think Grace Jones. We'll get the full list tomorrow, but I think it is more important. The Commonwealth Day is a hugely significant day for the King, and the music is part of that, but actually I think it is more the soft power element of it. And it is very interesting. Remember when they had the Commonwealth Day service last year, the King gave a video message. The Princess of Wales wasn't there either, but I believe both, you know, the King will be there and the Prince and Princess of Wales, along with the Queen, will all be in attendance. And it is a significant day because there is all this, you know, the way the world is in a sort of bit of a fragmented state. and it is saying the power of the Commonwealth to unite. And obviously, you referred to there Canada, where the king is the head of state. And by all accounts, Donald Trump and his sensitive ego was a bit upset to see the king being photographed with Zelensky, because, you know, and he might now be cooling to Britain because, you know, it seems a bit of a slight to him because, of course, he does want everything to be about him. And Canadians are obviously feeling a little bit sort of blindsided, flummoxed with this sort of claim that America or Trump wants Canada to be the 51st state. But it does show the king and the power of soft power. And that's been the unique thing about the monarchy and what it brings for Britain, because he is able to pick up the phone without necessarily it being you know, when we see Keir Starmer go, we know it's staged very politically to create something. Where the king, it's under the radar, but might have a way of achieving results. And obviously at the moment, there's a lot of sensitive things going on which are fragmenting people's views. So for the king, it is a very important time for him to be able to exert his influence, and particularly within the 56 nations that are part of the Commonwealth.
And of course, as you say, tomorrow is when the list is going to be launched of the King's playlist. Bob Marley, I can see him singing Kylie, I Should Be So Lucky, dancing around the kitchen. I can see that. But he also went to see Ray. I didn't even know who Ray was.
Well, I must admit, I had to look up and think Ray, and there were one or two others that were not on my musical radar because, but, you know, he does have a genuine love of music. And I think what he's trying to reflect, and you know, these things are slightly sort of skewed one way or another to reflect what the message is overall.
Talk to me about this post by Bethany Frankel, because it made me kind of sit back and think. Bethany Frankel, who, remember, after Oprah was one of the first people, except you were number one, but Bethany was one of the first public figures to stop and go, I'm not buying this about Meghan's claims. And then almost immediately jumped back on to say, I was asked to remove my negative post about Meghan Markle. I assumed it was Gayle King that reached out to her about it, but we also now know that she knows Trevor. So
she does. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So would Trevor have asked her to take? I doubt Trevor would ask her to take it down. But she recently said on Instagram that she, of course, trying to clean up her own front porch. She's like, I only ever comment on their professional ventures. I only ever comment on what they're doing professionally. But scrolling through Instagram, I feel like, and TikTok, she says, I feel like we're now getting to the point where we are bullying Blake Lively and Meghan Markle. And I feel like, first of all, I actually haven't seen much bullying. I feel like people are trying to hold both of these people accountable. Although I don't spend a lot of time on social networks aimlessly. Do you think that that's where this is coming from? People trying to call them out on lying? Or do you think we're bullying two people that don't have a very good reputations? These are not considered nice people at the moment.
I think, Kinsey, that game recognizes game, and that Bethany Frankel, who made her career, her name, as being a professional bully on The Real Housewives of New York City, is recognizing two other professional bullies. By all accounts, Blake Lively has a history of behaving very badly. She is not well liked among her peer group. Same thing with Meghan. We know there are reports in the palace going back to her days before she even married Harry as having the temerity to bully his staff. So I don't take what she says seriously. I think somebody got to Bethany Frankel and said, if you want to have certain relationships or certain business ventures continue to fly, dial it back.
Yes, because I have seen her be critical of both of the women before. Specifically, I mean, she talked about being invited to Blake Lively's It Ends With Us movie premiere, and how there was a weird energy there. And then so I know you have these contacts, and now all of a sudden you're saying that there's bullying. That feels
seriously, Kinsey, like Blake Lively is, as far as everything, the evidence is coming out, and Justin Baldoni's team is showing their receipts. I don't understand why she would take up for somebody who in Blake Lively seems to be on a mission to destroy this man's career.
Yeah.
Make it clear that he can never work in Hollywood again. He can never direct another film. He can never book another acting gig. Meghan Markle is bully number one on the call sheet. And that's why this show isn't landing. Nobody believes that Meghan Markle wants to open her doors. I mean, episode 1. Can we talk about episode 1 for a moment? Her great
The help,
Daniel,
the hired
makeup
help.
artist,
Yeah.
Uncle Daniel, who she didn't know a thing about.
Yeah.
I forgot I wanted to bring down, so I had guests over this weekend, and when I was shopping for snacks, what did I see but peanut butter filled pretzels, which is new to me. I had never been exposed to this before with Love Meghan.
Right.
So I bought them as kind of a gag, but they remained unopened. And I think, Kinsey, my critical mistake was not following Meghan's advice to open that bag, find yet another plastic bag, decant those pretzels into said new plastic bag, find some sort of label that I could write in calligraphy, and then tie a bow, a knot, which he then helpfully told us to not ever tie a knot without finishing it with a bow.
Yes. Yes. These are all must-have pieces of information that I don't know how I went almost 40 years without. Now that I have it, I feel complete as a human being. Yeah, no, the pretzel thing. Yeah. The pretzel thing is just is wildly hilarious. Yeah, sorry to kick it back to this though, but I do think it's important to say, I think part of the reason that we don't like Blake Lively and Meghan Markle is that they weaponize these sensitive, culturally relevant topics, whether it be race or whether it be Me Too. It felt like Blake Lively was kicking it back to Me Too with the Justin Baldoni allegations. And like you said, he could never work again. Especially Ryan Reynolds is incredibly intimidating. Ryan Reynolds has a lot of money and it has his hands everywhere. And with Ryan Reynolds going after him, it really does kick everything up a notch. But with Meghan, it's race. And then because somebody asked me yesterday that's followed me for years, why is everybody so mean to Meghan? She's just trying to make money. And I said, well, because she made the last few years of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's lives a living hell, accused an entire institution basically of racism, then tried to deny it, ran in the opposite direction. Prince Harry said that we made that up, even though there is footage of it that they tried to have taken down. They had it yanked off of CBS, CBS's streaming service. In the next few days after it initially aired, they didn't want it out there. It's not convenient to find, by the way, unless you search the web for people that shouldn't have uploaded it, that uploaded it. And then Prince Harry doesn't address it in Spare. They don't really address it in the Netflix series. It's throwing a bomb and then trying to pretend like, oh, I didn't do that. No, I didn't do it. And I think people are fed up with people that weaponize, culturally some of these really important topics.
I think that is such a smart observation. I think you're 100% right. Just to circle back to Harry's sort of dismissal of the idea that he and Meghan had ever implied the royal family was racist. It was either that interview he did with Tom Bradby or Anderson Cooper, in which he blamed the media for saying that they said the royals were racist. Excuse me, sir, kindly F off. Okay. And I think that this is the problem. America there's been so much division sown in this country over things exactly like you're saying, race, culture wars, Me Too. What is an accusation that is a career-ending one, and what is an accusation that really should just be considered as an honest mistake? These people are weaponizing things to their own benefit. And I think people are really wise to what's going on, and they know a hypocrite when they see one. They know a phony when they see one. Ask me not to weep for Blake Lively, whose husband is well on his way to becoming a billionaire, or Meghan Markle, whose husband just inherited, I believe, another 40 million from the Queen Mother's estate. have a sense of proportion. Most people can't even afford to buy a dozen eggs.
The more we see of her, though, the worse the opinions become. I mean, when she was most adored and loved was in the early days where, you know, there was a bit of mystery about her, despite the fact that she'd been an actress and she'd been on Deal or No Deal. But people, I mean, she wasn't a big star. So, you know, there were no interviews or there was really no insights into who she was. So she had this mystery about her, and that worked in her favour. The more we see, the more interviews we see, the more meaningful conversations with the like of Oprah, the less we like her. So that's a fundamental problem. If her goal is to be loved again by the public, but the product is working against her, then I don't know how you do that. I just think she's poorly advised, because anybody who's close to her who has seen this project, and they would have seen, you know, it's very heavily produced and edited, you see the product, you go, nah, let's just scrap this and start again. Or maybe we keep 10 minutes and that's it. Because if the goal is to produce compelling TV, that wasn't it. If the goal is to rehabilitate her image, that's not it. So I really just don't know what the point of the whole exercise was.